Good evening, everyone. My name is Ian Andrews. I'm the Executive Director of LakewoodAlive. We are a nonprofit economic development organization. We have several programs that we oversee. One is the Main Street program, which is a national model for historic downtown revitalization. That's where we focus a lot of our efforts in the downtown district on Detroit, between Butts and Arthur, putting on large events, design, with the Merchant Association, on and on. We also seek to help out other parts of the city on Madison Avenue, East End, West End, because we realize that there's so much more to the community than just in the downtown district. What we're here to talk about tonight, though, is a different program. It's our housing outreach program, and then even more broadly, our partnership with the City of Lakewood, and the work that this entire community has been doing for quite some time now with Housing Forward, and the work I think a great collaboration between government and nonprofits. So we will hear from several individuals. We'll then go down the line with some questions for the panelists, and then we'll open it up to questions from the audience. First, I'd like to introduce Mr. Dru Siley. He's the Director of Planning and Development, Building and Housing for the City of Lakewood. Drew.
Good evening, everyone. How are you? I'm a little bit off my game tonight, and I can attribute that mostly to Ian's mustache. I know it's for a good cause, but it's strange, to say the least. So, as you all know, mostly like the residents, a lot of familiar faces out here, housing is, to say the least, a big deal in our community. It's our biggest economic engine, and that's a simple fact because it makes up the majority of the buildings in our community. The graphic behind me is, as it's labeled, Lakewood at a glance. What we're focusing on talking about tonight are the 12,600 or so 1- and 2-family houses we have in our community. It's really kind of the core of a lot of what Housing Forward is all about. You can see that 52,000 residents and a little over 5.5 square miles. The fact that everyone knows is Lakewood is the most densely populated city in the state of Ohio. And we're actually the most densely populated city between the New York and Chicago metropolitan areas. So there's a lot of us in a very small area. Because we have so much housing, we have so much to offer, it also helps drive our commercial development. We're not talking about that tonight, but you can see we've had a lot of success in the last several years with new investment in both Detroit, and we're starting to see more on Madison Avenue, but that's all tied directly to the quality of our housing stock. Now, a number of years ago, it's recent history and fresh in all of our memories, as the housing crisis really started to take hold of the country as a whole. Well, we realized that we had to protect our biggest economic engine. And how are we going to do that? We realized that the cavalry was not going to come. It wasn't going to be a federal government kind of bailout at the local level. The state wasn't going to be able to help us in a meaningful way. So we had to figure out a way to take care of ourselves and work our way out of this crisis and that issue. We knew the market also wasn't going to recover at any kind of steep incline. It was going to be a gradual, slow, steady climb out of it. So how are we going to do that? And I'm going to reverse engineer our discussion a little bit about the success. What we've done in 18 months, which for those of us who've been working on Housing Forward, and that's how we branded and labeled this kind of it takes a village approach to managing housing to housing stewardship, is we've been able to turn around, as you can see there, almost 1,300 houses that were in significant disrepair as of the spring of 2012. And the way we did that is we started making good data-driven decisions. We started formalizing our partnerships with LakewoodAlive, other nonprofits. Judge Carroll has been a tremendous contributor to that success. The real estate community, the land bank, and other partners to figure out how we're going to get there from here, and how we're going to make sure our housing stock is in good shape for the next century. As our biggest asset is also some of our the oldest properties in town, which is actually a benefit. Unlike a lot of communities, most of Lakewood's housing stock was built before World War II. Those buildings have very good bones. They were built with real wood and stone and those kinds of materials and can easily be around for another century. But now we have to intervene and make sure we're renewing that housing so it can stick around. So you can see there, in April of 2012, we did, and for those of you who've ever heard a little bit about this program before, or this initiative, what we did was a comprehensive housing survey of all 12,600 1- and 2-family houses. We actually stood over several months in front of every one of them, and we ranked them against our property maintenance. What we did is we gave them a 1 through 4 designation. 1 meant you had no violations on that property, nothing that could be cited. The 2 meant you had some minor stuff, a couple trips to Lakewood Hardware, some elbow grease, you've probably taken care of that. A 3 meant you had multiple exterior violations and you were hiring contractors to have to fix that. This isn't stuff that typical DIY kind of person can do. And a 4 meant what happened? This house is in horrible condition, may have to be demoed. What do we need to do with that? Go ahead. So that's the original map. The yellows you see on there are those 3s. The blue and the green means the house is in good shape. What we found is that 1,741 houses were yellow. They had multiple violations. The roof was shot, the paint was in bad condition, driveways, garages, all of those kinds of things needed attention. So we had to figure out a way to go after this. For a long time, the way the building department had been run was strictly complaint driven. We waited for everybody else to tell us where the issues were. Well, if you only have 9 inspectors and you have some 13,000 properties, that's a failing proposition. There's no way you can be strategic in how you pursue. You're always putting out fires. So by doing the survey, we figured out how to focus. And we focused first on the worst properties. And so the comprehensive survey and the resurvey. We did the initial survey, we wrapped it up in March. We resurveyed again to check our progress in November of that year. And then we set folks to task again all this year, and we just wrapped up the most recent resurvey to see where we are. I'll give you some of that data. The proactive code enforcement piece has also been more than just the stick, more than just enforcement. We've done a nice job, I think, of connecting people to resources as well. So as we give you that correction notice and tell you there are violations, we've done more to explain who else can help you in fixing those violations. Here are the city programs, here's what LakewoodAlive can do, here's other partners who may be able to help you. We've been more efficient in how we use those limited resources by focusing on those 1,700 most troubled properties. It helped us. We assigned those to inspectors. Each inspector had a few hundred they had to tackle. Those became their cases to manage, and we worked our way through the city over the course of the last 18 months. The partnerships, which I talked about, and then part of it is being nimble. You know, that's often used in business. Mayor Summers, coming from manufacturing, talks about that a lot, and it makes a lot of sense. It's our persistence in following up. We learn by doing. What are the lessons we learned from being out in the field and talking with folks and connecting? How do we adjust from what we learn, and then continuing on through and staying the course on our approach? So we made those data-driven decisions. We focused on the most challenged first, as I mentioned, and we also had to do a lot of myth busting to educate ourselves about some of the long-held truisms that turned out not to be true at all. For example, of those 1,700 properties, it was often said that it was likely that all those were going to be rental properties, that rentals are the issue. Well, in a community like Lakewood, about 54% of our housing stock is rental of the units we have. Turned out for the single-family homes that were rated 3, about 90% of them were owner-occupied. For the doubles, the 2-family homes, it was about a 50-50 split between owner-occupied and fully rental property. So that was a myth. The other comment I have is CMHA, the Cleveland Metropolitan Housing Authority, the Housing Choice Voucher Program, often referred to as Section 8. You've all heard that before. You've heard that comment. There's a problem property in the neighborhood. Well, that must be a Section 8 house. Those people are in some kind of assistance. So all in, if you count all the apartments, all the doubles, all the singles, there are about 30,000 housing units in Lakewood. There are about 450 voucher holders in the city. So statistically, it is unlikely that one of those problem properties is indeed Section 8, as it's correctly referred to. And in fact, of those 450, about 40% are senior citizens. A lot of them living in properties like the Westerly, so they're getting that kind of assistance. So truly, that problem property down the street, not only physical condition, but what might be happening inside, has nothing to do with assistance in most cases. Has nothing to do with that kind of support they're getting from the Cleveland Metropolitan Housing Authority or Department of Public Housing. It may just be the fact that your neighbor is a knucklehead in making bad choices. I also realize in saying knucklehead, I just became my father tonight at this meeting. We've also done a better job of using technology in the field. We went to a web-based platform, database, to inventory all permit activity, all violations, everything that's happening with the property. We've armed a lot of our inspectors with iPads. So they're out in the field, they can look at history up on the property, they can actually generate correction notices right there. We can also keep contractors honest if necessary. If we see someone working on a property, we're not familiar with them working on that property, our inspectors can stop by. Are you a registered contractor with the city? We can look you up. Do you have permits? We can look you up. And if not, we can stop the job right there and send you down to City Hall. Let's get that corrected and we're on the right path. The other piece that's been a humongous help to us when we only had 9 or 10 inspectors is we've more actively recruited residents to be our eyes and ears out in the field. There's 52,000 of us here, so we've developed things like the My Lakewood app. So as we take complaints, which we processed about 1,500 of those this year so far, total complaints. If you can show us something that's an issue in your neighborhood, you can send us a picture, you can send us an email that helps us take a look at what's going on. We can also look up into the housing survey data to see what's going on with that house. What did it come up with? How was it rated during the survey? What are the things that we know about it? And there are instances where we can't see what you see. So our inspections happen from the sidewalk. It's everything we can see and sight from the sidewalk. I can't just walk into your backyard. So if a house behind you, the backyard is full of garbage or trash or is overgrown, if you're willing to let us come onto your property, which we have more and more residents doing that, and we can see the issue, then we can cite it. And so those partnerships with a lot of residents has been extremely helpful in addressing very difficult issues. So the 2013 survey, what you can see, there's a lot less yellow. In that 18 months, we were able to reduce the total number of those really challenged properties by almost 75%, just by focused, directed activity. Now, we have still a lot of work to do. We're going to go back out in a year, in the fall of 2014, and resurvey the entire city again, because then we know the state of housing. We're not just guessing. We're not just working on the problem properties we've identified. We're not just working on from complaints. We're looking at a very holistic view of the city. Now, my favorite part when we put up the maps is everybody immediately goes to find their house, want to make sure you are rated appropriately, and then find out about your neighbors. So what were they rated? And the interesting thing, when we launched Housing Forward, when we were out on the streets, we'd be standing in front of someone's house and they'd come out on their porch and say, why are you standing in front of my house and staring at it? And we explain what we're doing, and then as we all do, we'd say, well, have you seen this house down the street? Do you know about this? And we would tell folks, we're going to get to all of them, and we did. And so what was very fair and even about that is that we covered the entire city. We heard some pushback from our colleagues in other cities saying, you can't do that. You'd be dinged for selective enforcement. But because we inventoried everybody, we took a very comprehensive view. We were being as fair as we could in managing this. So as I said, not just enforcement. We've also worked very hard with our partners in connecting residents to resources in a bunch of different ways. City programs, unfortunately, are limited in who can accept those funds, who can receive those funds, because of the federal funding, the funding that supports them comes from the federal government. There are income guidelines, so it caps your household income as to what you can do. So just because you might not qualify for a city program, there's other good information we can provide, technical information about best practices, about repairs. We keep a contractor database that's updated monthly on onelakewood.com. So you can see all the contractors by discipline that are registered. We know who they are, they have insurance, and they have the appropriate skill set to work in a particular discipline. And if we can't help you, we're going to relay you to somebody else who might be able to help you. To lenders, we have good working relationships with a number of the financial institutions in the community. And instead of you having to cold call First Federal, we can refer you to Heidi. It's a very different conversation when you have those kind of interactions. As I'm wrapping up here, there's a couple other things, and as you all know, housing is amazingly complicated. Just when you're in a house, all of us who have 100-year-old Lakewood houses that we love very dearly, you know how complex that is. Our houses are very close together, so there's very little elbow room in our community, but that's part of that cozy feeling we like very much, and that's putting the best positive spin on it possible. But it's how do we all coexist? And some of those things that are the city's responsibility is in that technical information, providing support, and very good customer service when possible. Last year, earlier this year, through attrition, our chief building official left the city after a few years. And so we had an opportunity to re-envision that position. And what we created with the support of City Council was the city architect. And so we were looking for someone who was a licensed architect who could also be licensed by the state of Ohio to be a building official, who had those LEED kind of green accreditations, and the whole skill set that comes from the client services side of the world. We wanted them to be there as a resource inside City Hall. So we hired Lakewood resident Mike Walensky, who had served on our architectural board review. And as an example, he's been with us for about 4 months. The renovations of properties that the city is doing now, we acquired this property on Alameda from the land bank for about $4,000. It's a double that we're converting back into a single. And we're going to learn a lot about how to do that very well and see if that's actually something that is an efficient model for converting houses in the future. But we are doing this in-house now. We can do these design services in-house. So typically we would pay an architect $6,000 or $7,000 to do this for us. We now have that capability on our staff to handle these at City Hall. It's changing how we're dealing with these kinds of issues. We're also providing that resource for residents. So you're looking at what is a best practice for modifying your house, making an upgrade. We can certainly be a partner in discussing it with you and setting you on the right path before you get too far down the road. And then lastly, to those programs that we have, part of what has been a tremendous help to us is coordinating the code enforcement with the strategy and the funding. We merged planning and development, housing and building back in the middle of 2011 with that idea in place of going from the concepts and the funding to how to get things done in the technical piece of the field. Because our code enforcement folks are also ambassadors for our programs, we have these federal dollars on hand from Community Development Block Grant. That last year, for example, we were able to do 26 deals. We had 26 projects we supported through that low interest loan program, what we call the RAMP. We also developed a new program because we realized as housing is evolving, one of the key issues is accessibility. So the Rehabilitation Access Maintenance Program, or RAMP, we come up with those acronyms in City Hall. We actually have a whole list of them we just make up. I hope to someday create a program that will fit. But that is in response to, as you have baby boomers who have different needs as far as being able to get into a Lakewood house, how do you help fund them? We have more applicants coming in now than we've ever had before. We went from 26 to 66 in a year because we have the right staff, the right attitude, the right approach inside City Hall. We also do a down payment assistance program, as you can see from there. We did 20 first-time home buyer loans this year that leveraged almost $2 million of real estate. So those are just small examples of what the city is doing on that front. And our partners who are going to talk to you today also are going to daylight a lot more of those programs and who else can be helpful to you in the future. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions at the end.
Good news is as I look around the room, I recognize just about everybody here. That's good. And I don't recognize you from court, so that's better. They asked me to speak about the Housing Court Diversion Program, which we started about 2 years ago. And it's something that's been on the back burner for a number of years. Basically in Housing Court, what we want to do is to balance this as a need, enforce building code, and maintain housing stock with the interest of the property owner. So a lot of times building code violations will come up in front of me, and they're not as clear-cut as you might think. I mean, we had one case a few years ago where the person got cited for having a bird bath in their backyard, or a pedestal sink that they're using as a bird bath. So the question is it a plumbing fixture, is it a bird bath? And a lot of times as a judge you gotta kind of figure it out, because you have to say, well, you have to comply with the code, because we want that. We also balance that with, it's your property. And you have the right to do things. I don't know how many of you remember the pink house on Larchmont? Anybody? I mean, if you saw the pink house, you remember it. You didn't have to say which pink house. It was shocking pink. And it was an older couple, and when they first put it in, people complained about it, but then after years later, people were so happy, because they'd say, oh, we're 5 houses down from the pink house, when they were telling people where to go. Well, we started this project a couple years ago, and building code cases are criminal cases. I'm going to go through some numbers and statistics that are in the material as well. But they are criminal cases. Somebody comes in front of me on a building code case, it's a minimum $25 fine up to $1,000 fine. That's set by City Council, so there is a minimum fine. What we've done with the diversion program, and this is through the support of the other 2 branches of government, the legislative branch, City Council, the administration, and Mayor Summers, and prior to that, Mayor Fitzgerald, were both helpful to get this done. And included in that as well is the law department, the building department, because we all have to work together to get this project off the ground. And in doing so, we did this. Criminal cases are different. Somebody breaks into your house, somebody assaults you. There is maybe punishment, deterrent of future crime. Here we want to do something else. We want to get compliance rather than dealing with past misconduct. We want to, If I give a guy a $500 fine and really whack him, well, that's great, but then he can't put the money into the house. I'd rather have him put the money into the house and do it that way. And a lot of times people just don't have the money. I mean, we all know that. Times are tough. So we've created this diversion program. And it does two things. One, instead of giving people fines, we're now giving them assistance. And two, as I said before when we started this, it's a criminal case. Criminal case means a criminal conviction. So if you are a teacher, if you're in the medical profession, if you're in law enforcement, you get a criminal conviction. That could be your job. Think about that. Anybody who works for a bank that's bonded, you say, well, have you ever been convicted of something? Oh, yeah. I mean, you put down yes, they may not look and say it was a bad gutter hanging down. All they know is you were convicted of a criminal offense. So what we try to do is bring into compliance. We established it in late 2010. The diversion program is limited primarily to owner-occupied premises. And I say that because we're not talking about the renters and the landlords. Those are people that are here and they're buying property for business. That's different. We're looking at Lakewood residents who, for one reason or another, cannot maintain their home. They lost their job. We have a woman that's raised her kids, and she's now a grandmother, and she's probably too old to be living in that house. But again, it's a family house, and she doesn't want to leave it. But she can't maintain it anymore. It's just too big for her, too big of a project. And that's what we use the diversion program. So rather than saying, okay, you're going to be charged, you're going to be fined, and we say we're going to get into this program and let's see what we can do to get the property into compliance. It's to assist the homeowners to fix up their property and achieve compliance, and also to improve the quality, which is a win-win for everybody in our community. The goal is to streamline enforcement. I say it, I'll probably say it again before the night's over, this is not a program to delay. This is a program to get into compliance right away. They plead no contest, we'll set them down for a hearing, we'll find out what they have to do, come up with a laundry list. What are the 5 things they have to do? Some are relatively simple, some are long and complicated. I mean, there's 5 violations on a house. One is there's a missing globe over the porch. There's a bare wall. All right, you go up to Home Depot, you spend $4, you put the thing up, and you're done. The other one is repave your driveway, or raise and build a new garage. Those are going to be a lot more complicated. So we kind of look and come up with what can be done and how fast it can be done. Just to give you some idea, we've had 58 participants the first year and 46 last year. And again, for the most part, these are limited to owner-occupied houses. We will make exceptions from time to time. If somebody lives in Lakewood, they might have a double down the street or somewhere else. If they're doing that, that's not their primary business. This is something that they're doing on the side. We might let them into the diversion program. Now, how do you get into the diversion program? Well, first of all, you don't repair your house. That's one thing to come to court. As I said, the first requirement is that it has to be the consent of the law department and the building department. So every Tuesday we do criminal arraignments. Anybody who's charged will come in, and I'll ask the prosecutor before we go out and do the arraignments, all right, we got 7 building cases today, or 3 building cases, or 20 building cases. Tell me which ones you will consent. And sometimes they'll say, well, I can tell you these 3 are fine, these 2 I'm not too sure. I want to talk to the building inspector. They'll check with the building inspector. The building inspector will give them feedback and say, yes or no, we want them in, or we don't want them in. And quite frankly, if they agree or disagree, then I kind of give it to them, because the prosecutor really knows the case. And then the building inspector, if the building building inspector knows that the person is giving them a hard time, then they might say no. So the mere fact that you're an owner-occupied homeowner does not necessarily mean you'll get in the program, but you need that to get in there. And again, coming to court, it's a criminal complaint that's filed. And I want to step back from it, because a lot of times people think, well, Judge, why don't you do something about this? I am not a law enforcement officer. I have no authority until a complaint is filed in the court. Then it moves from the the law department, the administration by law, the responsibility transfers to the court. But until that happens, I really have no responsibility. So you say, you know, this house got on its road and it's not being taken care of. I don't have the authority to go out and cite them or bring them to court or things like that. That's done by the law department through the building department. Once they bring that person in, then we sort out how we want to do it. So first, the building department will agree. They have to comply with court dates. We have a monthly meeting. So they come to court every month, and they have to come to court. A lot of people say, well, no, I can't make it to court. But no, that's required. And also to diligently work with the building inspectors to follow the directives and the schedules for compliance to set out what has to be done. And that's also based on the weather, because that can be difficult too. I mean, you can't have somebody go out and paint. It's, if I recall, it's got to be above 55 degrees, it's got to be dry. If you paint on bare wood, if it's like today, if it's bare wood, I've learned more about construction than I ever thought I'd know. And if you paint on bare wood, if the wood has got some dampness, what's going to happen in May, it's going to get warm, that water's going to come out and bubble the paint, and it's going to look like, not look good. Come May, just bubble and you have to repaint again. So painting is really not an option at this time. You can't, you know, people come in and say they need a new driveway. I'm going to put in a new driveway in 3 weeks. And my first thing is, what are you going to put in? Because you can put asphalt in November. You can't put cement in because cement needs 30 days to cure and before the salt hits it. So if we have the salt trucks now and somebody pulls onto your driveway, you can put in a brand new cement driveway. Concrete is expensive. And then you come down in April and you find it all pockmarked because the salt wasn't properly cured. So these are things that we have to look at the weather to see. And as I tell people with painting, you can't paint in January. And this is where we have monthly meetings, even in the bad weather. Because you say you can't paint in January, but guess what? The painters can't paint in January either, but they can do estimates. So now's the time between now and April, this is the time to sit down and say, am I going to paint the house myself? Am I going to hire a painter? Am I going to decide it? What do I want to do? And get prices. And that way, because if you call a painter in July, they laugh at you. You know, we're booked up to the end of the year. This is a really short season in the Cleveland, Lakewood area. But if you do it in January, February, then you can get it down and figure out how you're going to do it and what you're going to do. The fact is that we consider it a prior code violation. Somebody who's come before the court or come before the building department lot. Again, there's a 3-step process. I'm the 3rd step. The first step is the building department contacts a person, sends them a letter, says, come back, excuse me, let's try to take care of this. They don't do it, they refer it to the law department. The law department then has a prosecutor hearing, so they try to get the person in compliance. If they can't do it, or the person doesn't respond, then they file a complaint with the court. So the city really does go out of their way to avoid bringing these cases to court if they can possibly not do it. But it's when the person is not doing it, then they bring it to the court because, quite frankly, we're the ones with the teeth that can bite. And they say, now you've got fines. So have there been a problem before? The nature and the number of the violations. What are the costs of repairs? The impact on the community? And there's other mitigating and circumstances as well. The housing code compliance, we developed a schedule to, like I said, abate violations. We have monthly meetings with attendance is mandatory. We have a 10 o'clock session usually where we are the non-diversion ones, and then the 11 o'clock ones, which are quite frankly fewer in number, but more labor intensive because you get into all kinds of issues. The participants must agree. If they don't agree, they're out of the program. You find out that they're using this just to, and we've had some people that do that. A lot of we've had the problem with some landlords. They know if I've got to paint the house, if I can get to October, I can get to April. So I can kind of like run out the clock for 6 months. So that if we see that this is just somebody using this as a delaying tactic, then they will be removed from the program. And I have to tell you that we've had very few people, I think 4 participants since we put this in that have been removed for non-compliance. So we've had pretty good success rates. We try to assist them as well, seeing if they can be get low interest loans, they can be temporary variances from the city, assistance in the programs like the school building program at Lakewood High School, which will build your garage for you, LakewoodAlive has been a godsend, helping out with pointing people out on how to get low interest loans or if they qualify and things like that. Other community service work and community service workers. And those are people from the court. We created a program when I first started 20-some years ago that instead of sending a lot of people to jail, we put them to work. And we do a lot of community service. And there's a lot of elderly people, there's a lot of, we get a lot of hoarders. But we've had people go in and we'll have the community work service say, okay, you go in and you put this in 2 piles. This is the stuff you want, this is the stuff you don't want. And the community work service people come in, bag it, take it out. Because many times tell the people they can't do that. They'll trim bushes, they'll trim trees, we had a house on Bell, they came over there to dig out bamboo. You ever try to dig out bamboo? It's growing while you're digging it. It's one of the fastest growing things around. And it goes under and into the neighbors. So we had somebody, we had the community work service come out. We had 3 or 4 people who were on probation from court, and they went out and they, that was their community work service. We've used them throughout. We use them for removing graffiti in the City of Lakewood. So that's been good. A lot of church organizations have come to that as well. It's more than just not painting your house and not fixing your steps. Many times we're also dealing with substance abuse, mental issues, domestic issues at home, and all these things, and that's why we'll get the probation department. I was, I don't know if I can use the word blessed in public school, but we were to find a gentleman named Tom Ostermix, who some of you may know. Tom's a retired building inspector from the City of Lakewood, and he kind of coordinates this with me, and he goes out to the home, and so when we have these sessions in court, I've got the prosecutor, I've got the defendant, I have the building inspector. The building inspector goes out and does an inspection the day before that day, and then Tom does too. And it's a nice mix and balance of trying to find out how much money they have, how they can do this, how do you prioritize, and Tom is very good because he's a very good, compassionate person, but he also knows building codes. And many times I refer to him as my eyes and ears, and like I said, he's been a real big help to get this done. To give you an idea of the housing cases that we have here by the numbers, and I really, 1 minute left, okay, I'll speak fast. And I'll be around for questions as well. But just to let you know, here's the building code violations, and those are dependent on what are filed with the court. So they go up, they go down, depending on what it is. We didn't put 2013 in because many times they come in at the end of the year. There are a lot of times we'll get a lot in November, December, and the reason for that is the building department's trying to work with people through the summer. And then when that doesn't happen, then they realize, okay, it's not going to happen. So a lot of our cases get kicked over the next year because there might be painting violations or other things. Eviction cases, also when people don't pay their rent. Many times there might be a counterclaim by the tenant because they're saying that they didn't properly fix up the place. And then the rent deposits are where renters can come in, and if the landlord is not maintaining the property, the renter, after giving reasonable notice, can deposit the rent with the court, and then that rent cannot be released except by court order after a hearing, after they show that the violations have all been abated, or the violations, the tenant was incorrect, that these were not violations. So in other words, if the landlord isn't doing their job, the building department can get down to them and file criminal charges. The tenant can also just deposit the rent and effectively say, bring it to my attention that way. So they come in all different ways. There's not as many of those because many times tenants just say, well, they may be ignorant of this provision that they can deposit the rent to the court, or just vote with their feet and say, you know what, I'm not going to fight with my landlord, I'll just move out, there's enough other devils in labor I can find. So I'm going to leave it at that. I know that there's some others to talk about, and I'm going to be around to answer any questions other than pending cases. Thank you. I appreciate you coming out on such a cold night to learn more about what we do. Thank you.
Judge Carroll, thank you very much. Next up, please introduce Allison Urbanek. She's our new housing outreach director. She's been on the job since the beginning of September. She's a Lakewood resident, formerly worked at the Homeowners Resource Center. Allison.
Good Good evening. Thank you so much for coming out. Again, as Ian said, my name is Allison. I came from Home Repair Resource Center in Cleveland Heights. I have been working in the housing industry, I guess, for about 6 years. And I was happy to come on board here at LakewoodAlive because I am a Lakewood resident. I live over on Spring Garden. My house was yellow, and now it's a blue. So I'm really excited about that. I've been working hard. So, I fell into housing by accident, but it's something that I really love. I drive down the street safely, but I look at the roofs as I'm going down the street. I'm looking at things, I'm looking at the paint. It's just something that I really enjoy doing. And again, I'm happy to be here in Lakewood to do it with you. So thanks again for coming out tonight. Now, something that I have learned about LakewoodAlive is it's the best kept secret in Lakewood. And I hope all of you will go home and tell your neighbor or your friend about LakewoodAlive because of all the great things that we do. And I'm going to spend my few minutes to tell you about what LakewoodAlive does. So we are a 501c3, so we are a nonprofit agency. When we do work with homeowners, we do get support from the City of Lakewood, Community Development Block Grant Funds, or CDBG funds. We do focus on economic growth, stability, revitalization of the downtown district, housing, and community engagement. Okay, so we are a housing outreach service here in Lakewood. And we do work with homeowners and the entire community to help bring the community together and get it remodeled and in good condition and sustained for the next 100 years. We collaborate with the City of Lakewood, the Housing Court, Judge Carroll, the Building and Housing Department, and the Division of Community Development. We have Jason in the back. Jason, can you give us a wave? He works with the Department of Community Development and all the great programs that Dru was talking about. As well as we are knowledgeable about housing resources and education. If anyone knows me, they know that I love education. I'm reading all the time, I'm learning new things, and part of my position here at LakewoodAlive is to bring education to the community. So we will be bringing hands-on repair classes, we'll be bringing lecture series. They will be starting at the end of January, February. So we can, again, educate homeowners on how to be responsible and sustainable homeowners. We do partner with the schools, the businesses, and other nonprofits here in the community. We do partner with the City of Lakewood High School, Mr. Dow, the construction sciences teacher at the high school. We do participate in that garage program, that fabulous garage program. Last I heard, they have 300 people on the waiting list. So there's obviously a great need, but they also are doing great things in our community. So it's fabulous to have such a great thing here in Lakewood. And then we are liaisons with the block watch and community groups. We try to get out there all the time and spread the word. So if you are in a community group or on a block watch, give us a call. We'll be happy to come out and tell you all about things that we do at LakewoodAlive. So we have this fabulous program, these volunteers who come out. It's amazing. Where I came from, we could barely get a volunteer to do anything, help a senior citizen shovel the sidewalks or anything like that. But when I came on board at LakewoodAlive, they were telling me about their volunteers. And I was like, oh, okay, you know, maybe a few volunteers here and there, help people. But it turns out that since basically May until now, they've had 1,473 hours of volunteer work. That has turned into $30,000 worth of repairs in the community based on those volunteers. 272 volunteers, I'm going to say it again, 1,473 hours of volunteer work, and that turned $30,000 worth of work in our community. Now, I don't know about you, but I am proud to be a Lakewood resident because of that. I think we just deserve a round of applause for that. Neighbors helping neighbors making repairs. That's, again, part of the reason why I personally live in Lakewood. So we work with volunteers. We have a fantastic paint rebate program. There are some handouts in the back. We are going to update it just a little bit over the winter, but we have a paint rebate program. It's $1,000, up to $1,000 rebate on materials to help people who cannot get out there and purchase those materials, get them out there to paint their homes. We also partner with Sherwin-Williams to establish a revolving fund, and we can basically help people up front get some dollars to get some paint. And then once the job is completed, we do get reimbursed. So again, creative ways to get some repairs done in the community. Sorry, this popping noise is really throwing me, I apologize. So we have a paint rebate program, again, up to $1,000 of material reimbursement. And then we partner with other agencies like NHS. We have Mariah in the back. Hi, Mariah. Nice to see you. So NHS is a fabulous resource. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but they do provide foreclosure intervention. Once a week, Mondays, they come into our office and they work one-on-one with homeowners to help them get back on track with their house. With their house payment, they do Save the Dream, as well as they do modifications with lenders. But they also do our down payment assistance program education. Dru spoke about the down payment assistance program. NHS does the actual first-time homebuyer education. We want to make sure that those first-time homebuyers are educated. They're going to be sustainable homeowners. The word of the day is sustainability. So we want to have homeowners who are sustainable, keep them in their homes, but provide them with education so they're going to do that. So we partner with them. We do our hands-on repair classes, our education to get that maintenance aspect. NHS partners on the financial education and ways to keep them, again, sustainable in their homes. So we partner with NHS. They do financial counseling, first-time homebuyer education classes. And then we do partner with other organizations like the City of Lakewood for their low-interest and deferred loan programs. Again, Jason in the back can give you information about that. And then we do meet with banks. Again, we do all the dirty work. I sit down with bankers, I learn about all the programs. I don't know about you, but going from bank to bank to bank to bank gets tiring and confusing. So I'm going to do that hard work for you. You need some assistance, you're not sure where you want to go, how you want to do it, where the best interest rate is, or the best program that's going to meet your needs. I've done it. I've met with banks, and I am prepared to sit down with you and let you know about the different offerings. So again, one-stop shop for home repairs, Lakewood Alive. So then we also do information and provide residents with education. We have our community forums like this one. We do one-on-one consultations. We have a contractor evaluation or referral guide, as well as our housing education services. So one-on-one consultations. I have learned a lot about housing, just as the judge has mentioned, about roofing, painting, plumbing, electrical. I've learned a lot along the ways. I've also learned how to spot good contractors as well as bad contractors. I'm happy to sit down and talk with you about your repairs, help you plan out your repairs, kind of talk things out. I've had older women invite me over for tea, and we sit and we walk around, and she points things out, and we talk about the things that could happen, the cost, and if they'll get the payback, after getting the repairs completed. So that's a one-on-one consultation. We also do have volunteers who will come out with you, if necessary, bigger jobs, and maybe help you write out some specs, kind of think through projects, kind of bigger picture, as well as a great partnership with the building department. So we can all together work together to figure out how to complete your repairs. So I mentioned the paint program. This is a before and after. This is over on Andrews Avenue. These homeowners are fabulous. I want to hire them to come paint my house. They did it on their own. They did this. They participated and received the reimbursement through our paint program grant. But they spent the summer painting their house. I think it took over about 60 hours of them working together. They have about 3 different colors, and I believe they partnered with the Cleveland Restoration Society. We have Margaret in the back. Hi, Margaret. On picking colors. You want to make sure that you have a historically accurate home or really nice colors that go well, is going to improve your curb appeal. Cleveland Restoration Society has technical assistance programs, and they'll be happy to do that with you. So again, if they were here, I would give them a big hug and a big round of applause because they did a fantastic job this summer. So I already mentioned most of this, but again, we want to be the one-stop shop for home repairs. Before you think about getting your home repaired, kind of come call us. We'll help you lay everything out and point you in the direction of all the resources available in the community. Okay, so this might be old hat for some of you, but I like to remind people. I like to be the cheerleader when people call me and say, hey Allison, I need to get my roof replaced. I'm about to call contractors. So we sit down like a little powwow, we do go team. We chat them up, get them ready to go so that they have no nonsense. They are ready to go, ask questions, get good, honest-to-goodness estimates from the contractors. They don't kind of shy away, well, I'm not sure what kind of materials they're going to use. They are ready to go. So I kind of got ahead of myself here, but so we're talking about maintenance, but we will talk about go-to contractors. I get really excited about working with contractors, okay? Like every day I have to psych people up, so I get really excited. But again, maintenance. So preventative maintenance prevents number 4s and number 3s. If you stay on top of your preventative maintenance, we're going to not have emergency repairs down the line. So just a reminder, we are in fall. Make sure you clean out your gutters and downspouts. You know that pesky wet basement that you have? More than likely it's because you have some leaves trapped in your downspouts and your crocks. So make sure you clean out your gutters. Make sure to pull down your storm windows and install them up if they come off over the summer. Caulk around your windows and doors. So we have Good Sense in the back. We have Vince. Vince does energy audits through Good Sense. They will come out. They will show you where you should be caulking around your windows and doors. You know, hello, that's wonderful. That's where you're going to save your money over the winter. So make sure you start caulking around your windows and your doors. Shut off all of your outside faucets to prevent your pipes from freezing. I don't know about you, but my dad is tired of me calling him and saying, oops, I forgot to open up my faucet over the winter, Dad. My pipe blew out. Can you come over and help me? So every fall he calls me to remind me to open up my outside faucet. So he called me last week, so I'm sharing that knowledge with you. Make sure you open up all your faucets. Test all of your carbon monoxide detectors and smoke alarms. You know, we fell back, kind of get in the routine of doing that. And make sure you get an energy audit. Great way to save on your energy costs. And if you mention LakewoodAlive, we get a nice little donation from Good Sense. That's a shameless plug. But call Good Sense, get your energy audit, and make sure you mention LakewoodAlive. Then call me and we'll talk about all your results and we'll start planning your future repairs, because I really enjoy that. Okay, so now we are at the Go team. So contracting repair. Make sure you research. My favorite is throw out those words, like you're getting your roof replaced, mention ice guard. Hey, what kind of ice guard are you using? Are you putting up 3 feet or 6 feet? You may not know what that means, but it gets them thinking, you know, oh, they might really know what I'm doing. So you ask about it, 3 feet or 6 feet? You know, it's an easy question. Ask a lot of questions. If you're not sure, make sure you feel comfortable. You know, he runs quickly through the house and he's writing everything down left and right, but you're not really having a conversation. Like you didn't even need to be there. He's just running around and then he's going to hand you a piece of paper that you can't read at the end. So make sure you ask a lot of questions throughout the process. Make them take time with you and that you feel comfortable with the repair that's about to happen. Make sure it's in writing. You know, they can casually, oh yeah, we're going to give you crown molding at no extra cost. Sure. They walk forward and then it's not on your estimate. Well, where's my crown molding? Oh, I don't remember saying that. No, you're mistaken. So make sure everything is in writing. Make sure your contractor is licensed, bonded, and insured. You can do that through the city's website as well as calling the building department. I did it on my contractor recently. They're very friendly and happy to answer those questions. Make sure you get 3 estimates. You know, we don't want to waste our time. We don't want to get the 3 estimates. Maybe we use a guy who we've used 3 times before and has done good work. But 3 estimates is a good way to make sure your price is in check. You know, if you get 2 that are similar and one that's way out there, either lower or higher, the 3rd estimate is really there to help make sure you're getting a fair price. Apples to apples. Good way to lay them down and make sure it's a fair price. And I'm happy to go over estimates with you. No charge. Call me. We'll set up an appointment. I'll come on by, or you can come by us, and we'll just review the estimates. It's nice to talk about it. Just make sure it's a good thing. Never, ever, ever, if you don't remember anything else that I'm rambling on about up here, is do not give them money up front. Ever. Ever, ever. Now, they can deliver materials, and then you will pay them for it. That's one way to do it. Or if it's a painter, you can go with them and buy the paint. But if you give them money and they never show up, again, they have your money. If you bought the materials and they never show up, you still have your materials. So you didn't lose out on anything. So never, ever, 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 ever give money up front. Work out a payment plan. Okay, so again, my name is Allison. I'm the new Housing Outreach Director here at LakewoodAlive. I'm thrilled to be here. I live on Spring Garden. I walk to work. I'm so excited about that. So please call me. Please utilize me. I'm happy to work with you. Anything you need. My contact information, I do have cards in the back. And I'm happy to be here and answer your questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Allison. Now we're to our panel session. And I'd like to introduce, you've met everybody so far, but I'd like to introduce Jeff Curtis, who's with Howard Hanna Realty. Jeff, would you like to say just a few words about yourself and maybe just kind of the status of the housing market from your perspective? I believe you have to turn it on.
Well, my name is Jeff Curtis. I am an agent with the Howard Hanna office in Lakewood. This year and last year have been great years for real estate in general. We're definitely seeing improvement in prices and sales. We're down on inventory. So it's just a fantastic time to buy or sell a house. So call your realtor.
Great, thank you. We'll start with Drew and the judge. What are some of the most important things that cities and other housing professionals can do for homeowners right now?
Go ahead.
That's a great question.
You know,
I think, and Allison really did a nice job of touching on this, or actually talking about it in depth, is just having good information. One of the things we found, for example, in this idea of empowering residents is when you have a 100-year-old house, basic information like the anatomy of your house, so to speak, what to call the different pieces parts, so you feel comfortable when you're talking with contractors, when you're talking with building inspectors. You don't feel like such a novice, even though you may have lived in the house for years. When you're trying to describe over the phone to somebody, that thingy that's broken just by the roof, but if you could talk about the eaves or the rails and the spindles, having that kind of ownership of information, I think, is a good basic first step. And I think those of us who work in housing all the time have a responsibility to help try to raise that conversation.
I think also just to provide resources to people. A lot of times, some of the people may not realize that their house, that they have to do things to their house. They don't realize the effect of peeling paint, things like that. And I hate to say it, and they probably don't believe it, but maybe getting a citation or letter from the building department could be a blessing in disguise, because the building inspector might see something that's a small problem that could easily blossom into a very big problem. And through the building department, the law department, the court, we can provide information, resources. Again, the reason why we started the diversion program is the only penalty by law that I have for first offenders is fines. Well, you come into court and say, I can't afford to paint my house because I'm unemployed. Okay, I'm going to fine you $500. Well, I'd rather have them put the money into the house than put the money into the general revenue. Don't tell Jennifer that. Really, and that's the beauty of the diversion program, is to say, here's Lakewood Alive that people may not be aware of, and go down and talk to Allison, and go to the building department. If you're going to hire a contractor, make sure that contractor is registered, because if they're registered, they're bonded. There's a lot of people who are unemployed who say, you know what, I can do this work for you, and they don't do a good job, or they don't show up. And as Allison said, you're out the money. So what the city can do is actually provide a lot of good resources. So if you're going to put money into your house, you put the money into the right places, and you're not taken advantage of. Because if you, excuse me, if you don't know this stuff, and a lot of us, and I'll throw myself in the mix with that, then you are at the mercy of the contractor. And the contractor says, oh, you need this and this to do, and you may not need that to do. And again, that's where we're all kind of working together to provide that information to homeowners.
So to Allison and Jeff, I mean, along those lines, how important is education, being able to work with homeowners to help them learn, not so much having people go out and work on their houses, but not only helping them with their project, but then helping the homeowner be more sustainable homeowners, so they are going to be better stewards of their property. How important is education?
Very good question. And again, I love education. But I think education is extremely important because oftentimes people will buy a house and they think they sign on that dotted line, they turn the key, and ooh, it's their house and it's going to be wonderful and fabulous. But if it's like me, I bought my house, everyone told me it was going to be fine and dandy. The first big rain, my roof was leaking in my enclosed front porch, and I was standing there crying, again calling my dad saying, what am I supposed to do? So education is key. We need to teach first-time home buyers or people who maybe weren't the ones who were the primary caregiver of their home, people who are in the new role of caregiving their home, how to tackle those things, how to work with a contractor, how to maximize their homes to get the best energy efficiency out of them. So education is key, and again, we will be putting on hands-on repair classes as well as lecture series starting in January to help better educate people.
And also the City of Lakewood has some great educational programs for first-time home buyers about how to manage their finances and also the importance of lead-based paint. And that's an issue that comes up with FHA financing, so your paint maintenance is very important in the purchase and the sale of your home these days. So paint maintenance is very, very important.
So Jeff, and I appreciate you saying that, while there's many positive stories about the housing market, we have a lot of successes. What are some of the challenges that you see, the ways a community can work on together to try to address, particularly here in Lakewood?
Well, as far as the neighborhood watch programs that you were talking about, some of our biggest problem is that properties that are vacant are falling prey to copper thieves. And it's really an epidemic. It's not really a statement about your neighborhood. It's just something in general. A vacant home is going to be prey to copper theft. And it's unfortunate because then that property becomes distressed and it makes it very hard to get financing on a property if we can't have running water for a bank appraisal. So that's why you'll see a drastic price in the list price of a home when it becomes distressed and it's substantial. So then the property will fall into disrepair.
From the city's perspective, what are some things that residents can do to curb some of the issues they see in the street? Obviously, being able to report, and Drew, as you mentioned earlier, having kind of the eyes and ears on the streets, but not only for their own properties, but for their entire street. How can they help the city assist with this process?
Beyond enforcement, as I mentioned in my presentation, part of the strength of this community is that there are a lot of us in a very small area. We're very much used to being in close proximity to one another. And part of that idea of community, especially hyper-local to your own house and your own block, is what can you do to help your neighbors out? Sometimes it's lending a hand in very small ways. It's loaning a ladder or a tool or shoveling a driveway or doing those kinds of things. And sometimes in our busy lives we forget that, but it can make a huge difference. If you think about the repairs or improvements or work you've had to do, or even when you're just moving, an extra set of hands really can make a big difference. And it doesn't mean you have to be best friends with your neighbors, but in certain instances, that can make all the difference. And I think just making a point of every once in a while doing something like that, that's going to help us have so much effect for the good, for community, capital C, and also directly just basic repairs to homes. It makes a big difference.
So the last question I have, and then I'd like to open it up to the audience for questions. We talk about area median income. And so a lot of programs kind of cap out at this 80% area median income. So the PAID program that Allison referred to, if you're above 80%, then you can't qualify for a PAID program. But you're just above it, say you're $500 over income. So you're not going to qualify, but you still could potentially be cited and end up in court. And so I'm trying to figure out, and this is something we've been working on, what sorts of programs, open this up to anybody, what types of programs exist for those folks who are just barely above that 80%, who are just barely above income? Where can they go? What are some resources that people can have access to that can help them out?
Well, as I mentioned, I have been going to bank after bank after bank. And there are programs out there. There is, for instance, and I don't like to name drop, but Dollar Bank is doing a program specifically for homeowners who are underwater. They have no equity. They have the ability to do unsecured loans up to $10,000 at a favorable interest rate. It's not going to be super, super low, but it's a very reasonable rate for an unsecured loan to help get home repair jobs completed. They will require to see contracts. They want to make sure that you are using the dollars towards home repairs. But they're trying to be responsible about it and helping homeowners who are in need to get the repairs done. There's also Charter One that has a $1,000 loan, 12 months, low interest rate. And so they're trying to be competitive. A lot of banks won't lend less than, a couple $1,000s. So if you just need $1,000 to get paint to paint your house, there is a program available. We are working to try to find a product or create a product that's available to unconventional home owners, people who cannot get bank financing. We've had a rough couple of years. People have lost their jobs, foreclosures, bankruptcies, things like that. So we are working to try to partner with our local banks to create an unconventional product to help homeowners. So stay tuned. We're working hard on that.
I do have one question for Jeff, and I also wanted to add. As Housing Forward has moved forward, have you seen an uptick in the strength of the streets and of our neighborhoods and of the appeal of individuals either staying in their home or when homes are for sale, they're turning on the market much more quickly because people are becoming more attracted to living in Lakewood?
Well, working out of the Lakewood office, we have a pretty good radius. So we work in Cleveland and Fairview and Avon and Bay Village, but Lakewood is a hot market. And we've been seeing properties that have a great price, a great location, and a great condition selling in multiple offers within 1 and 2 weeks of their list. So it's just been very exciting. We had a fantastic summer. So now again, if one of those 3 situations is a little bit off, you might not see those results as fast. But basically our days on the market has been about 59 days, which is down from last year. So we're seeing a faster turnaround of properties as well. But Lakewood's a very hot market. We've also seen a decline in distressed, foreclosed, bank-owned properties. It's a lot more traditional sales. And because of the rise in housing values in this market, a lot of people that were underwater maybe 3 years ago are now in a position where they can sell their home and go to the move-on home that they've been dreaming about. So we've seen a real positive growth in the market this last year.
Great, thank you. So I'd like to open up to questions. We have Bryce Sylvester, who works in the Planning Department, and Sean McDermott, who is our board president. Please, if you have a question, please flag one of these two gentlemen down so you can speak in the microphone, because we are recording this forum, and so we'd like to be able to capture your questions as they're asked. So we'll open the floor to anyone who has a question for our panelists.
Hi, my name is Gabe Jurasek. I live on Elm. I moved into Lakewood in the 60s, so I've been here 50 years, seen a lot of changes. Before I become very negative about things, I'd like to commend everybody who is doing a wonderful job. Back in the 60s, nobody quite took housing seriously, but I think I'm realizing why, because in the 60s, the average house was only 50 years old. It's hard to, there's a couple of things. One is, I hope you understand the difference between recruiting citizens to help and accepting help from the citizens. I lived in a communist country, and having your fellow citizens report on you is not the kind of society you want to be living in. And I hope you clearly understand the difference between accepting their help and recruiting them to spy on your neighbors. And I even though none of you might be old enough to understand that.
Hey, Gabe. May I respond on that? And I'd also like, in the interest of full disclosure, Gabe and I have a healthy, ongoing public discourse over the last couple of 2 years, 2 or so years. Gabe has actually elevated to a sport, if not an art form, busting my chops in public meetings. So I always appreciate your questions, and I certainly, as you phrased it, intended to mean accepting help from our residents and not recruiting a secret brigade of spies.
No, I truly have to praise you, Drew, because I think you're one of the smartest non-elected officials in this city. In all the years I've been here, not that I know or knew or even care to know anybody. The second thing that really impressed me to know, and then I didn't realize this, that there were 1,000 evictions almost every year. I don't know how many rentals there is, but if there is 54% of rentals, does that mean there is 6,000 rentals in the city? And if there is, if you have 1,000 evictions out of however many rentals, shouldn't that raise some kind of concern? How do you help a landlord? I'm sure no landlord in his right mind is looking for a tenant that he's going to evict. It just defies logic. So they inadvertently end up with a tenant they evict. But, you know, we seem to focus a lot on the homeowner, which is wonderful. It's truly wonderful. But this statistic tells me that perhaps we should do something for those unfortunate landlords who, maybe through no fault of their own, end up selecting tenants who they have to evict. Assumption being that a tenant that's being evicted is really not a good citizen. You know, so is there anything that can be done to help the landlords? Maybe referral to credit agencies, maybe help with the credit reports, maybe. Finally, sorry to be long.
Okay. If I can just respond to that I just asked Drew how many rental units, and he confirmed what I thought, about 16,000. So when you look at the evictions, if there's 16,000 rental units and 1,000 evictions, that's really a small percentage of people that aren't getting along. I mean, what it tells me is there's 15,000 tenants and landlords where the tenant says, I'm going to move out, I'm going to leave the place in good shape, I'm going to pay my rent every month, and they shake hands and they get their security deposit back, and it works. There is a percentage that don't, and it doesn't mean they're bad people, the tenants. Some people got laid off and they just can't pay their rent. As we know, there's been a lot of unemployment. There's been sometimes there are, I'm going to blame Ed Favor on this, because there'll be some people that will move into the city of Lakewood. You'll have a single mother with 3 kids, and they can't afford the house in Lakewood, but they want to get into the Lakewood school system because they know it's a far better school system than Cleveland. And they can't afford it, but so what happens is that they'll get there for a year, and then they just can't pay the rent. They get behind, and many landlords are very gracious and help them. I mean, I'm shocked at how many times when the landlord does evict a person, and they'll come back and they'll say, well, what's the unpaid rent? And they'll say, well, it goes back about 8 months. Well, the landlord has been carrying the tenant, and not 8 months solid, but if the rent's $400 a month, they may pay $350 this month, $250 this month, $600 that month to try to bring up the arrears. And they're scraping along the best they can, but part of it is that they're doing it for the best interest of kids, to get the kids in a good school system too. So, but when you look at 1,000, yeah, you say, boy, 1,000's a lot of people. But when you stop and think about, compared to 16,000 rental units, it really is a small percentage overall. And by the way, we do the city, and I'm proud to be part of this, does a quarterly seminar 4 times a year at City Hall for landlords, educating them on a lot of things, including how to screen a good tenant. So the city is very proactive in that regard as well.
I have one other thing, and I want to preface it by saying, in one of these meetings, they complained about the realtors showing the houses and sometimes not having good things to say about Lakewood, simply because they didn't know of all the good things that were in Lakewood. So I sort of suggested if somebody came up with a booklet advertising all the good things, they can be part of the packet that the real estate agents can pass out. Lo and behold, one of those booklets showed up. And as I was reading through it, I noticed that one of the articles, it says that due to this inventory, housing stock inventory, they found out that Elmwood was the worst street in Lakewood. Well, thank you very much. I live on Elmwood. That must have depreciated my house by 50%, that sentence.
Well,
So I'm a little bit leery about giving any more suggestions. Yeah, and one more thing, McMansions. Some cities around the world, around the country, I should say, have this McMansion syndrome where they tear down the old house and build a McMansion. I'm not sure that that's something we should even worry about, but is a replacement a strategy as opposed to maintaining? I mean, 120-year-old house, at which point do you start entertaining the idea of replacement? Thank you.
Well, I'm happy actually to speak to Elmwood, which I had not seen the publication that listed as the worst street. I don't necessarily believe that, but there were a lot of threes. And last summer we worked in partnership with the City of Lakewood to tackle, I believe, about 26 threes were on the street, and we were part of 13 of those, trying to get those rehabbed. What was really exciting about what happened in Elmwood, though, was that not only were those 13 houses improved, but then the homes that they had the finances to improve their property, but they weren't doing it because the property owner across the street wasn't improving their home. What they didn't know was that person across the street couldn't afford it. And so now that person across the street was getting help to improve their home, they had to keep up with the Joneses. And so the whole street lifted up, at least I hope it did. And that was and we have a board member who lives on Elmwood.
However, the written word is the written word.
Right, well, I'm gonna find out those, we're gonna get them out of circulation. All right, next please.
McMansion, does anyone have idea about replacement as opposed to repair?
I don't think it was a good.
Is that for us? That's a fair view. Yeah, we have a question back there.
Actually, it's more of a comment. I wanted to piggyback. The question that you had asked for people who may be over the income threshold. I'm sorry, I didn't open with. My name is Mariah Harris, and I'm the homeowners center manager over at Neighborhood Housing Services here in Cleveland. And we have low interest loans for people who are over that threshold of the low income 115 to 120 AMI. And we don't mind going in second, third, fourth position if you need assistance in fixing and rehabbing your home. So if you don't mind stopping back at my table, I have cards for Keisha Matthews, who has an office out here in the City of Lakewood. And I also have some how to select and work with contractors flyer for anybody who's interested, as well as other things that we have at our table. But I wanted to make sure that I let you know that we are here. And not everybody is bankable, not everybody can go to the dollar banks and the chases, and that's where a nonprofit can help you in that area. Thank you.
Great, thank you for being here. Go ahead.
This question is for Dru. When we were working on the vision for housing, there was a discussion about the houses that were in red. How many of those have been condemned and torn down? I just wanted to know that statistic.
The fours, the houses in red, and so those maps in the back haven't been fully updated. The good news is, during the original survey, there were only 47 of those in the entire city, which out of 12,600. Right now, as it stands, there are just under 20 that are still in that condition. The majority, so when we first had that proposition of what are we going to do with these 47 houses, if you're figuring out the average demolition cost is $10,000 to $12,000, and who's going to bear that brunt, and then what you have is a vacant lot. You've removed the blighting influence from the neighborhood, but we've had to spend a heck of a lot of money to remove those properties. Fortunately, to Jeff's point, the market is hot enough, and those houses having good bones, we've seen most of those rehabbed privately. And actually, the city's acquired a few of those through various programs that were funded through neighborhood stabilization and community development block grants. We were able to get the house for not a lot of money and put a lot into it because we're the only rehabber that can take a loss, because we take a longer view on that kind of investment. If we buy a house for $20,000, put $150 into it, and sell it for $130, what we've done is brought up all the property values in that neighborhood. We're going to lose out on that immediate transaction. But those funds were made available from the federal government to either spend them or lose them, so we did that. So we're under 20, and now we're in the hard work of what are we going to do with those 18 or 19. And we're going to be working on that in the year ahead at the very least. The good news for our community too is in the last 5 years, we've only had to tear down 22 properties. You know, if you look at some of our peer communities who are tearing down that many every year, if not many, many times more than that, I think that is speaks to the quality of the housing stock, that even these houses that are severely distressed in the right hands and the right value proposition can be turned around. And to Gabe's quick question in response to the McMansion piece or the rebuild, you know, our lots, we're not seeing that because it doesn't price correctly. It's not a good return on investment. It's actually better to rehab. The couple projects the city's done, we built 2 new houses in the last year with Habitat for Humanity. One in Birdtown on Dowd, a lot where we tore down an old house, and one right at the corner of Lakewood and Franklin. That was a series of row houses that were condemned. You know, the cost was astronomical to do that per square foot. I mean, we were over $200,000 per property. Again, using federal funds to do that. You know, for most developers, for most folks who are going to new build, what makes it pencil, what makes it work at a square foot price is volume. You know, doing one house at a time is extremely expensive. You know, usually they're building 40 houses at a time, and that's how you get that value. It's not to say that it's not possible, and there may not be that kind of reinvestment. We just haven't seen it yet.
Allison, go ahead, please.
To add on to that, the most sustainable home is the home that's already built. You know, when you're tearing that down, you have to put everything in the landfill and everything else. We do have good, solid homes in our community. So to add on to the McMansion thing, we just need to keep maintaining and stick with our houses, not tear them down. And nobody wants a McMansion anyway. So.
We'll take 1 or 2 more questions. Anybody else? Councilwoman-elect Morris.
Hi, I'm Cindy Marks. This is a comment more than a question. Having had the opportunity to walk the streets of Lakewood this past summer as I was campaigning, I can tell you that on every street there's a unique personality, and I felt even more passionate and more in love with this town than ever before. There's an intimacy in this town that is indescribable, and I can say from my own experience, when I first decided to run, I thought, this is my neighborhood, my town. You know, I didn't think of it as a city of 53,000 people until I started to hit the streets. But I felt very proud of the work that the city has done and that you have done, Dru, to make housing really a tremendous focus of improvement in the city. It is our greatest asset. And I'd love somebody to do a book on Lakewood porches, because you can just see also when you walk up onto people's porches, some people need a little help with their decoration and design, but for the most part, you can really tell the love affair that people have with their homes in Lakewood. It just makes me so proud to be a part and to be able to step up to serve the community. As a council person, I'm very excited about that opportunity. And I'm just so proud of what all of you have done, and LakewoodAlive, what a tremendous asset you are. And I hope to be able to work with you much more closely over the next few years. So thanks for all your hard work. And Judge Carroll, I have to tell you, when I heard about your outreach program of community service, I didn't even know that existed, and I was so proud of you that you're putting that work back into the community, making a difference not only in the homes, but in the small businesses. It's a wonderful, wonderful program that you've developed, and I'm so proud of you. Thank you for giving back to the community that way.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Please. Sean.
In your
And I think Bryce is working on that portrait too. So.
in your building development program, have you worked on our older trees and how to maintain so we don't lose as many, or any educational stuff on that?
Right. Lakewood, we're on Lake Erie, we have millions of trees. So council, in the last year, to acknowledge that issue and make sure, we're benefiting from the foresight of our forebears 75, 80 years ago who had the good sense to plant so many trees all over the community. We do have a reforestation program. The council appointed a tree task force who is actually working on, and they're going to put out in January, a report with recommendations as to how as a community, both at the city level, at the household level, at the neighborhood level, we can do exactly what you're talking about. So stay tuned on that. But yeah, we're certainly taking a look at that. It's very important to the overall health of our community, and especially just this plug-in. I know many of you are aware of this. Being on the lake, we've been in close conversation with the EPA about our stormwater quality issues. And having a healthy tree canopy, we're part of a tree canopy survey that the county is doing right now. They received a grant to do an inventory of our coverage, how many trees we have, how much of the city is covered, and what a positive impact green space and trees have on stormwater. We want to make sure that tree canopy and the urban forest is in good shape again for the next 100 years. So.
I just want to add that we may have some education on trees, and that kind of segues well. We are going to be sending out a survey monkey to everyone who provided their email address this evening. We want to hear from you. What do you want to see from Lakewood Alive? What kind of educational programming would you like? What can we do to assist you as the homeowner, as our community members better? So if you could just look for that, it's going to go out tomorrow. Again, it's a survey monkey. It'll come from me, Allison at Lakewood Alive. Give us your thoughts. Let us know, what do you want to see. I hope it'll take maybe 5 minutes at most. And if you don't have email access and you would like the survey, just let me know. I'll be around and I can get one out to you. So again, thank you.
Thanks,
and
Allison.
take some time with the survey.
One final question.
I think this speaks to the border of the McMansion issue more than anything. Like, during the development of Clifton Point, where I spent a ton of time going through the historical precedents of Sloan Avenue to assure the citizens that it had been zoned multifamily at one time. My question really is, if there's a role, and can there be a role for the city brainstorming and being creative, saying we need single floor housing for elderly, and there's a block of 6 houses that has never been zoned that way or anything. When I went to the Clifton Point meetings, I was convinced that Sloan should be multifamily just because it's a better use for that land. Now that if Clifton Point's a success or Rockport's a success or whatever, this mansion and teardown issue, yeah, we love the historical houses. But as a city, we also could, if it's your position, figure out where it can be better. Just because a house is 100 years old doesn't mean it fits a niche in today's market or other niches. And the niche in the market doesn't have to be $600,000 houses. I'm doing stuff in Ohio City that's 150,000 entry level, and the developer's making a ton of money. My question really is, can we as a community, one, figure out a way to get our citizens to accept that, and two, can the government really be more proactive in accommodating niche markets or micro developments or rezonings so that our house can not only look backwards but look forwards?
I'll take the third part first. No, it's a very good question, and the part about getting buy-in, I think that goes to this ongoing community conversation about what is Lakewood about and where do we want to go in the next 100 years. Acknowledging that there is going to be some obsolescence of certain building types. And we know very clearly right now that Lakewood has such a diversity of housing stock as it stands. We have all sizes for all income needs all over the place. But we know very clearly we are lacking in 2 key areas. One is for folks who love Lakewood and love our historic architecture. They just don't want to live in it. They want to live next to it in a new house. and the empty nester set, that north end of our housing market. And so the folks who have been in their house, their 4-bedroom house for 30 years, they've raised their family, but they don't need that much house, but they can't find that next product, so they're staying in the house a lot longer than they probably would, which is also limiting a little bit of our internal migration, where you have young families who bought their first house, they're looking to grow into the next bigger house, there's not that available stock. So the empty nester piece, we are looking at those creative solutions, and you know, our Board of Education member Favor here and our City Council partnered on the sale of McKinley School just recently to the city, and we're going to lead on redeveloping that for new housing types. It's 3 acres, which to us is an enormous amount of land in this little city. We're going to demo that building the first part of next year, and then we're going to actively solicit developers to have a mix of housing types, and part of what we've conceived for that is that single floor living. How do you add that to that space? How does that happen? And I'll tell you, I've heard from friends of my parents and my peers who've said, don't be surprised if you go out to the McKinley School parking lot and you see chalk outlines with our names on it, because here's where we want our unit. You know, there's a definite demand right there. Part of that conversation is, though, you know, Lakewood, to the comment, is a very hot market. We are not, like many inner rings, managing decline at all. We are in a renewal phase. We're figuring out where are we going from here. And so figuring out what housing types we need to add, and also how do we modernize our existing houses to be around for the next 10 years is absolutely a key and ongoing conversation.
Thank you. I'll leave you with a brief story and 2 quick thoughts. But first, I appreciate the panelists for being here. Thank you for your help and for your insight and participation. We appreciate our partners for being here as well. And I appreciate all you being here. Judge Carroll earlier mentioned core community workers, and I kind of had to chuckle a little bit because it's such a great program. However, we learned not to base a program, or one of our own programs, on people committing crimes in order to be able to help you execute your program. So we had our little Blossom program where you watered flowers, and our entire watering crew was based on core community workers. Well, as crime declined, the flowers would die because we couldn't get enough people to go out and water them. So we finally learned that that's probably not a good model to work on, and we finally got volunteers, and our flowers actually made it through this year. But Judge Carroll, thank you for your help with that. It's important to note, people say, why is Lakewood Alive involved in housing? You're an economic development organization. That doesn't make sense. But economic development isn't just commercial or industrial, which in Lakewood really don't have that much of. It's not just commercial, because in Lakewood, housing is economic development. That's the economic foundation of the community. And so it's central that we're part of this, and I'm extremely excited to be part of this team, where they're partners at the city and our nonprofit partners, working on housing through organization. And the last point I'll make is that our housing stock is our biggest asset, but quite honestly, almost equally, our school district is our biggest asset. Coming from a neighborhood in the city of Cleveland, we could attract young professionals and empty nesters, but the common theme was we couldn't attract anyone who had kids. Here, you're attracting families. We're seeing families come out to our events with strollers. So having a strong school district, and I applaud Mr. Favor of the board and the school district for everything that they've done, because that helps to also drive the market for housing and to strengthen the housing, the core of our economy. So I appreciate the good work that you and your colleagues have done. I thank you all for being here this evening, and I wish you a good evening. Thank you.
Nice job. Good job as always.
Well, yeah, definitely. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
I'm so glad you were able to.